North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news, the real news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. We make commentary, and then we debate. News, analysis, commentary, and debate. This is the Wells Report, and I am glad you are here. Thanks for joining us today. Support this report. Go to www.patreon, patreon.com/The Wells Report. Make a donation. It would be very, very nice if you did. So, the President of the United States was in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania the other day. I used to live there. And as a matter of fact, I was the incredibly proud host of the Wormland radio show, which was a morning broadcast on WARM, one of the most famous radio stations in America. And I know, how can it be famous if you've never heard of it? Well, it's because you didn't live in northeastern PA. That's why. That was, of all the great radio stations that I have had the privilege to broadcast on, that was possibly the one that I was the most fond of. I loved it there because it was a station with such a rich history, and not just of being on the air forever and serving the community of Wilkes-Barre and Scranton, but also because of the great people there. I worked with some of the best broadcasters in my career at WARM, and it was beyond a privilege. It was truly great work. Not my work, just great work. Basically, all I did there was take all those talented people and say, look, do whatever you want to do on the air. Do whatever you've ever wanted to do on the air, and I'll plug up all the holes. And that's what we did, and had a great time. It was truly fun and truly good. Once again, I was just a part of an amazing team. Now, that being said, the president was in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania the other day, and he said something that I just found. It was a part of the speech that the mainstream media, for some reason, left out. And I'm trying to figure out why. Now, maybe I'm just really sour on the way the United States government has been used and is being used to essentially threaten the American people. 87,000 brand new armed IRS agents. By the way, there's this wonderful advertisement for Facebook talking about how their security is, and they put 47,000 more people on just making sure that Facebook is secure. And they say that's bigger than the FBI. But it's not bigger than armed IRS agents. So you see, when it comes to threatening the American people, the Biden regime seems to be really into that. And once again, in this speech that he made in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, which was supposed to be a policy speech, which turned into a political rally, which, by the way, the legality of which is still being discussed today. As a matter of fact, we're going to discuss it. The President of the United States said this.
And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun. And for
Excuse me, Mr. President, because it sounded like you just threatened us with F-15s. Let me play that. As a matter of fact, before I do that, let me do this. Let me make sure that you can see this as well as hear it. Okay, because this is the president. Look at his face. Look at the look on his face and the look in his eyes when he says this. Okay, look at this.
And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun.
Why would we need something more than a gun, Mr. President? Why, in that particular case, why would we need a gun? You see, as far as I'm concerned, the only thing that I can see from your okay regime is that the people that need guns in your regime are IRS agents. Now, I get that maybe I'm just a little, shall we say, like I said earlier, a little less than sanguine. Okay. I'm a little less than trusting of the U.S. government at this particular moment. Because it looks to me, and it sounded to me like the president of the United States said, hey, if you want to keep Americans safe, if you right-wing Americans, you brave right-wing Americans, mocking brave right-wing Americans, you're going to need an F-15. Why is that? Why do we need an F-15, Mr. President? Is it because you're planning on sending F-15s to us? You know, that kind of blows the entire idea of my AR-15 being a weapon of war. And by the way, if I'm going to need more than a gun to defend Americans, I'm going to need an F-15, then what's the big deal about my AR-15? I mean, if you're going to send fighter jets after American right-wingers, these brave right-wingers, then what are you worried about our F-15, or what are you worried about our AR-15s for? Now, you have to understand something. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I forgot to hit that button. Before I shared this with you, I really sat back and I said to myself, John David, are you going off the deep end? And so I need your help. All right? I need your help. I need you to explain why. I need to explain why I think the president just said, hey, if you're going to defend Americans, you're going to need more than a gun. You're going to need an F-15. Excuse me, Mr. President? I mean, this brings up all kinds of things. And by the way, it also brings up the fact that you noticed at the beginning of this, I said the mainstream media didn't cover this. This, by the way, is from Human Events. Okay? This is from Human Events. Because I couldn't find it on the front page of USA Today. I couldn't find it on the front page of any of the mainstream media internet sites. Why? Why couldn't I find that? Is it because the mainstream media is perfectly okay with the president threatening us with F-15s? Now there are a couple of different ways of looking at this. Okay? The president didn't actually threaten us with F-15s. But I'm trying to figure out why that's something that I should believe. In other words, the threat isn't something I should believe. I'm trying to figure out why I shouldn't believe that he just threatened us with F-15s. That's thing number one. Thing number two, I suppose what you could do is you could say that this was just a bumbling Biden boo-boo. But maybe you have too, I've noticed that for the last 10 or 20 years, the Democrat, leftist, crazy people keep trying to make us choose between their spokespeople and their presidents and secretaries of state being either incompetent or malevolent. You know, it wasn't that Hillary was trying to obstruct justice and kept classified material on a wide open server that was penetrated by foreign intelligence services. It wasn't that she was trying to do that because she wanted to keep her private life private, which is why she destroyed all the Blackberries and wiped out the server and so on and so on. She was just dumb. She was just stupid. That's what James Comey said about her. Oh, she was just stupid. No prosecutor would bring this up. No prosecutor would bring this up then. Is that where we stand? That begs the question, of course, if no prosecutor would bring that up, why is the DOJ working so hard to bring up that kind of stuff to nail President Trump with? Anyway, I need to hear from you why, when I hear this statement from President Biden, I don't hear a president threatening brave right-wing Americans with F-15s. Now you can go to the chat room on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. You can do all of that. By all means, please do. Please do. As a matter of fact, call me, 817-379-2172. I'm really asking you to call and talk me off the ledge on this one. If you're going to defend Americans, you're going to need an F-15. Oh, really, Mr. President? So is this a bumbling Biden boo-boo? Well, you know, he is a gaffe machine, John David. You even told us that. You said, by golly, if you guys elect President Biden, you're going to elect a bumbling boo-boo machine. Yeah, I said that. So we can believe that the president was just incompetent when he threatened us with F-15s? Or maybe my entire premise is wrong. Get on the chat. Tell me what you think. Please, by all means, do that. I mean, I have to admit, I'm extremely concerned about this. Now, this isn't me making something out of nothing, is it? I mean, if it is, I'll accept that. But if it isn't, then just exactly what is this president attempting to do here? Let me show that to you one more time. Okay? Oh, wait, let me get it bigger. Not that the size matters, but, you get the idea. Here we go. This is the president.
And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe, if you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun.
Help me. Help me understand why that wasn't a threat by the President of the United States against, quote, brave right-wing Americans trying to defend other Americans. And while you're at it, talk me off the ledge that, after a threat like that, let's assume that you don't actually have a reason to explain that the president didn't threaten us with F-15s. Okay? If you can do that, then please do explain to me why the mainstream media didn't cover this. I know why the mainstream media didn't cover it. At least I think I do. But then again, maybe I'm just one of those brave right-wing Americans who happen to believe that the president and the regime that he's supposedly leading is lost its mind. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. One more time with feeling, verve, and enthusiasm.
And for those brave right-wing Americans who say it's all about keeping America's independent and safe. If you want to fight against the country, you need an F-15. You need something a little more than a gun.
So if we're fighting against the nation, we're going to need something more than a gun. Now, please understand that also in the speech, he stressed the Second Amendment is not unlimited. There are weapons that are not allowed to be possessed in America today. The rights granted by the Second Amendment are not unlimited, he said. They're not unlimited. Right now, you can't go out and buy an automatic weapon or buy a cannon. Well, I did notice that he didn't say that you couldn't go out and buy a man-portable air defense system, a man-pad. You suppose since he's threatened us with F-15s, maybe we ought to start looking around for a few man-pads? What do you think? Once again, I'm seriously concerned about all this. I think the president just threatened brave right-wing Americans with F-15s. And if he said that you're going to need more than a gun. Well, okay, so the president no longer cares whether we have AR-15s because he has F-15s? Is that really what he said? Or am I just going off half-cocked? So people are saying, exactly, if an AR-15 is useless, why take them away completely? Somebody else says, hey, look, he's long past Biden boo-boos. No, I don't think he is. I think what he's saying is that, yeah, if you're going to take on the United States of America, you need F-15s. Guns just aren't going to do it. Excuse me? Pardon me? Somebody else says, do they have enough spare parts to fly F-15s? Yeah, they have enough spare parts. The question is, do they have enough F-15 pilots that would, on the order of President Biden, jump into their aircraft and start fighting with Americans? Just exactly what is this president trying to tell us? Somebody else says he said this before. He has? Please do cite that source, because I think we need to hear about it. Maybe I'm just hearing this the wrong way. Maybe I'm just one of those brave right-wing Americans, one of those ridiculous idiots that wants to make America great again. I wonder what the president would say if I said something along the lines of, make socialist America great again. Would he be that upset about it? I don't think so. So is this just a bumbling Biden boo-boo? Somebody says he's well past bumbling Biden boo-boos. I'm not sure. It seems pretty straightforward to me. Maybe I'm just nuts. Let's just go ahead and say, John David, you're just misunderstanding. I wonder what Corinne Jean-Pierre would say. Oh, I'm not even going to dignify that with a response. Yeah. So I'm just curious. Anybody know where we can get a man pad? Because most of us are just America-loving people that believe the Constitution and Bill of Rights still has a part in our life. And he's trying to make that into us being enemies of the state, which turns the presidency and administration into a regime. Is that where we are now? This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Like I said, I was doing the research for today's broadcast and ran across the F-15 comment and went, did I just hear that? By the way, in case you're wondering, somebody said on June 23rd, 2021, President Biden said, quote, if you think you need to have weapons to take on the government, you need F-15 and maybe F-15s and maybe some nuclear weapons. Really? I'm curious, which is a euphemism for horrified. What the hell is a president talking about? Moreover, how come the mainstream media isn't talking about it? And while we're on that subject, the president and the mainstream media, why isn't the mainstream media talking about this? Fox is talking about it, but the rest of the mainstream media, mindless tunes, whistled poorly. President Biden traveled to Pennsylvania Tuesday to hold an event to tout the Safer America agenda. And I suppose we would be safer if there are F-15s flying top cover for anybody that happens against anybody that happens to be a brave right-wing American. Anyway, he said that his administration's policies to support law enforcement and fight crime, and then shifted his tone and attacked Republicans as he had urged those in attendance to vote for Democrat candidates running for positions in the Keystone State. So basically, the policy speech in Wilkes-Barre became a campaign rally. And if that's the case, the Democrat National Committee is going to go ahead and replace the fuel used in Air Force One to get in there, right? I mean, that's what's going to happen. Is that correct? Shortly after taking the stage, President Biden touted two prominent Democrats running for positions in Pennsylvania, first being Attorney General John Shapiro, who's running to serve as the state's next governor, and the second being John Fetterman, the state's Democrat nominee for Senate. Josh Shapiro is a champion for the rule of law as your attorney general, and he's going to make one hell of a governor. I really mean it. Prior to the event, President Biden said he spoke with Fetterman, a man he considers to be a powerful voice. He goes, quote, I tell you what, Fetterman's a hell of a guy, a powerful voice for working people. He's going to make a great United States senator if he changes his wardrobe, maybe. You're going to make a great United States senator. Mm-hmm. Despite comments made by members of his own party, Biden attempted to paint himself as a pro-police president who has supported law enforcement through his nearly 50-year career in public service, which began when he was first elected to the Senate in 1973. I'm opposed to defunding the police. I'm also opposed to defunding the FBI. Now, that, by the way, is a response to somebody that says, hey, you know what? We ought to defund the FBI. Now that's turning into a gigantic political stone to throw by the Democrats who said, I've always been pro-police. I have always been pro-police. Well, except for that one moment when I was running for office, when I was running for the presidency, and I joined Kamala Harris in raising money to bail out BLM rioters. Yeah, he's been pro-police his whole life. Yeah, he was first elected in the Senate when in 1973, when he was 65 years old. And then he said this, let me say this to my MAGA Republican friends in Congress. Don't tell me you support law enforcement if you don't condemn what happened on the 6th. Okay, don't tell me, Mr. President, that you support law enforcement if you don't condemn what happened during the BLM riots of 2020. And I don't believe you've done that. And where are the Republicans saying that? Well, once again, the Republicans are so worried about going, well, you know, we might not have that red wave that everybody's thinking about. We might not have that. Yeah. Trying to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory because they're Republicans. I want to say this. For these brave right-wing Americans, the Republican Party ain't it. Okay? We need the conservative party of the United States. We need a party that foursquare supports the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And we don't have that. If you think the Republican Party is fighting for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, you're missing something. Once again, maybe I'm just a little exercised by the fact that I think the president just threatened us with F-15s. Maybe that's it. But I will tell you that the Republican Party can't hit these softly thrown batting practice curveballs out of the flippin' park really concerns me. Don't tell me you support law enforcement if you don't condemn what happened on January 6th. Don't tell me. Can't do it. For God's sakes, whose side are you on? Yeah, Mr. President, when you were bailing out BLM rioters, whose side were you on? Why am I the only one saying this? Maybe Sean Hannity will say it later on tonight after he listens to this show. Anyway, and I don't care whether he does or doesn't, as long as somebody besides me says it. Good heavens to Betsy. You're either on the side of the mob or the side of police. You're bailing out the mob, Mr. President. It happened just a few short years ago. Come on, not even a couple of short years ago. Come on now. You can't be the party of law and order and call people that attacked the police on January 6th patriots. You can't do it. What are we teaching our children? Well, as a matter of fact, later on in this broadcast, I'm going to share what we're teaching our children. It has something to do with sex education. Except it's not sex education, it's having sex education, which is different. That's what we're teaching our children, Mr. President, under your watch, sir. Using the event to reiterate his call for an assault weapons ban in America, Biden urged those in attendance to vote against candidates and races who strongly oppose gun control efforts. Folks, it's time to hold your elected officials' feet to the fire and ask them, are you for banning assault weapons? Yes or no? Ask them. The answer is no. If the answer is no, don't vote for them. Well, which is it, Mr. President? I mean, if a gun isn't going to do it, we're going to need F-15s, then who cares about gun control? Because, hell, if you're going to send F-15s against us, you might be right. In the closing of the speech, Biden appeared to confuse the Senate position sought by Fetterman as being the governor's seat, telling those in attendance to elect that big old boy to be the governor of the state of Pennsylvania. Bumbling Biden boo-boo. I would keep track of them. I would actually number the bumbling Biden boo-boos, but doggone it, there are so many of them, and I'm so bad at math. Just ask anybody in the chat room. Just saying. Okay? Yeah. Prior to taking office, Biden suggested on the campaign trail that he absolutely would be okay with efforts to redirect police funding. But he's not against defunding. He's just talking about redirecting police funding. Does he honestly believe this is going to fly? I don't know that I'd be able to do this show independently like I can if it wasn't for the fact that I can grab a computer and look this stuff right up. It's the craziest thing. But I can look this stuff right up. Does President Biden think that I'm the only one that could do that? Seriously? Wow. Anyway, he said that he would absolutely be okay with efforts to redirect police funding, a suggestion he later walked back as he targeted Republicans and claimed in July 2021 they were lying. 2021 that they were lying about efforts promoted by members of the Democrat Party to defund the police. Mr. President, I know when you were elected to the Senate in 1845 that we didn't have video and storage of video where we can just bring stuff up. But we weren't lying. We were simply reporting the news, sir. At that time, this July 2021, Biden claimed he had never said defund the police and argued we would need more policemen, not fewer policemen, despite his previous support for reallocating funds. Several progressive members of Congress, including Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cory Bush, Ilhan Omar, have called for the dismantling, defunding, or greatly reducing the size of police departments. Omar called for the Minneapolis Police Department to be dismantled because it's rotten to the root. Okay. This is horrendous. And then there's this. This, by the way, is an exclusive, and it seems silly, but don't let it be silly. Okay? Don't let it be silly. All right? President Biden unsettled members of the U.S. Marine Band. Okay, that's the president's own. Yeah, he campaigned for Democrats. He turned a policy speech where it's completely appropriate to take the U.S. Marine Corps Band. They're awesome. I mean, they are awesome. Some of the best musicians in the world play in that band, as long as it's a policy speech. But if it's a political rally, well, that's illegal. Yesterday, President Biden visited the Keystone State, Pennsylvania, with a Marine band in tow for an event where he promoted Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro and Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman as they seek higher offices in the fall midterm elections. Presumptuous for me to say that, but think about doing me a favor. Please elect the Attorney General to the Senate. Elect that big old boy to be governor. He's running for the Senate, sir. Oh. Shapiro is running for the GOP governor seat against Doug Mastriano. Anyway, back to the band. I was unaware that active duty service members can wear the uniform. Take two. I was unaware that active duty service members can wear the uniform at political rallies. Asked Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin if there's an exception to that regulation for Democrat campaign events. Okay, this is according to somebody with the U.S. Marine Band talking to Fox News. Quote, anyone with eyes to see knows the Marine Corps just gave an in-kind contribution to Pennsylvania Democrats before the midterm elections, and they'll do so again on Thursday in Philadelphia. That's tomorrow. Something tells me the U.S. Marine Band will not be making the trip. When asked for comment on the band members' reaction to the president's actions, the Department of Defense pointed Fox News Digital to the White House, which, strangely enough, didn't provide a comment. Gee, I wonder why. I just wonder why. The Marine Band didn't respond either. They're just saying, oh, yeah. Mike Chamberlain, who's the director of the government watchdog Protect the Public Trust, told Fox News that it's never a good look for the president or any other government official to appear to use taxpayer resources for partisan campaign purposes. However, the president and vice president are specifically exempted from the Hatch Act, the law that restricts federal employees' engagement in partisan political activity, which makes sense. Regardless of whether there's an official violation, we at Protect the Public's Trust believe that officials should be held to the same standards regardless of party or ideology, and would hope that the activities of President Biden are held at the same level of scrutiny as those of any of his predecessors. Okay? So all I can say is this. I just keep seeing this double standard. I just keep seeing this hypocrisy. Do you? This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Give me a call. Tell me what you think. I'll put you on the air. I can do that, you know. I have this beautiful technocracy here. Oh, wait. Yeah. I just realized that for some reason, see, I'm learning how to run a television board, which is different than running a radio board. So what I did was I just showed you the screen of my computer. See, that's what this looks like. See, that's the screen of my computer. Yeah. But I have to hit two buttons to accomplish the same thing I used to be able to do with one button. So forgive me. I have to walk and chew gum at the same time, and sometimes I fail. Back with more of the Wells Report in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Support the report. Go to patreon.com/the Wells Report. patreon.com/the Wells Report. Like you can subscribe for $1 a month. That's not too bad. That's not too bad. You know, it's not too bad. $2 a month, $5 a month. That's all you got to do. That would be amazingly helpful. By the way, there is job news. It's not official job news. This is from ADP. Okay. ADP, private payroll job growth slowed markedly in August, suggesting companies are pulling back on hiring amid growing fears of an economic slowdown. This according to the ADP National Employment Report released this morning. Companies added 132,000 jobs this month, sharply missing the 288,000 gain the economists surveyed by Refinitiv had predicted. This is also below the 270,000 gain recorded in July and lowest since May, when employers hired just 128,000 workers. Quote, our data suggests a shift toward a more conservative pace of hiring, possibly as companies try to decipher the economy's conflicting signals, said ADP chief economist Neela Richardson. We could be at an inflection point. A crossroads? A fork in the road? An inflection point? Mm-hmm. Anyway, an inflection point from supercharged job gains to something more normal. All right? Now, keep something in mind. Government-caused inflation is what the Fed is trying to fix. The Fed is trying to fix it by pulling back on the reins of the economy, because inflation is the sign of an economy out of control. And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to pull back. They'll probably raise interest rates another 75 basis points or 0.75 of a point this month. We haven't heard about that yet, but they're probably going to do that. Maybe it'll be 50 percentage points, 0.5%. That's what I would do, or I would just let it ride. Because I tried to describe this before. The economy is like a whip, right? You take your wrist and you flick your wrist, right? By the time it gets to the end of the whip, the leather is moving beyond the sound barrier. Just starts like this and turns into, through the propagation of waveforms, into something breaking the sound barrier. Well, if you do too much too fast, you start one of these waves that you can't control. And the Fed is playing with fire. Now, the question is, well, of course, the obvious thing about it is, I'm a talk show host. Those people are brilliant. They're beyond brilliant. Okay, so I'm just concerned based on observations I've seen and conversations I've had with a former Fed chairman. Not a chairman, but a president of the Dallas Fed. So what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at a purposeful slowdown of the economy, which traces back to the $1.9 trillion thrown into the economy. All right. Because of COVID. You can argue all day about whether that was a good idea. There are good reasons for it, not so good reasons for it. Like the college tuition thing, that's another $1.7 trillion that's been tossed into the economy. All right. So what's going to happen is that the Fed literally has got to push us into a recession. And what's happening is that economists are finally saying, this doesn't look good. And companies are pulling back. We're hearing about layoffs. We're hearing about unemployment going up. There's nothing they can do about this, because the mistake was throwing all the money into the economy. And with my shaky math, that's $3.6 trillion in less than 2 years. Not necessarily in just appropriations, et cetera, but hard, cold cash thrown into the economy. That's something we've never seen before. We usually see some of that stuff going out to other agencies, and it takes time to filter down. Not this time. The government's going directly to people. And you can argue whether it's buying votes or not. You can argue that all day. But all I'm trying to tell you is that there is an economic reality that politics is not accounting for. Because politics is a sociopath. Politics is a sociopath. All it knows is what it knows. All it can see is what it needs. And anybody that slows it down is the enemy. And enough of an enemy to have the president threaten us with F-15s. Brave Americans. who want to defend American freedom. You're going to need more than a gun. You're going to need an F-15, said the smug, totally out of touch, bumbling Biden boo-boo of the day. I used to do this thing called the Smooth Move of the Week Award. I used to hand out the fabulous X-Lax trophy. Smooth Move X-Lax. And I realized that maybe that's something I should bring back. But the problem with that is that how many of those can you give to the President of the United States? I mean, the trophy company that sponsored the whole thing would be so busy they'd never have time to do anything else. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a couple of moments. Thanks for joining us. Alrighty then, back with more right after this. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. Then we debate after I make commentary, or sometimes all of those things that I just mentioned. We debate the news, the analysis, the commentary, and the debate. By the way, I forgot to say something last hour, and I should have. My commentary is my opinion. It is not the news. Anybody else you see doing this job thinks their opinions are news. They're not. They're just my opinion. You are perfectly welcome to debate those opinions as you see fit. So please do. You can do it by calling 817-379-2172, 817-379-2172. You can also join the chat room. Please, by all means, do it. We would love to have you. We would appreciate it greatly. And by the way, while we're doing that, don't forget to support the report. Support the Wells Report. Go to patreon.com, patreon.com/the Wells Report. Please, by all means, do. Okay? It would be wonderful if you would. I would appreciate it. And you don't have to spend a whole lot of money. $1 will do it. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on here regarding President Donald Trump and the Mar-a-Lago papers. So on August 8th, earlier this month, the FBI decided that what they were going to do was something they had never done before. They were going to raid a former president's private residence, and they did it. And they did it based on a search warrant that was sworn to by people we don't know, who swore to things we don't know, because the DOJ doesn't want us to know anything about what gave them probable cause. I believe that, okay, they wanted to protect their witnesses. They wanted to protect their sources and methods. But what's unspoken in all of that is the sources and methods. You see, if you can take the names away, then you reduce to about, 6, 8 people, the people who could have given those statements. And that's sources and methods. Because obviously, they have people inside the Biden circle. And those people are doing whatever they need to do to be able to take part in the DOJ's apparently political assassination of Donald Trump. They don't want him to run for the presidency in 2024. By the way, somebody that I truly, truly respect, Judge Andrew Napolitano, who got into a little bit of just a picayune kind of thing regarding, his conversations with people from an amorous nature. He was canceled. But Andrew Napolitano is a brilliant dude. And I really don't care who he snuggles up with at night. It's none of my business, and so on. And what Andrew Napolitano contributes to the United States is far more important than whatever happened that somebody decided to try to cancel him over, at least so far as I know. All I can say is that he says that he believes the DOJ will indict Donald Trump after the midterm elections. I can see no reason why he's wrong. But now, the President of the United States, having suffered a raid by the FBI of his private home under terms we don't know, we have no idea about because they've been hidden by the DOJ, who, by the way, can say all they want to about protecting their witnesses and their sources and methods. But they also can protect the fact that they have done something completely improper because they're basing it on politics. In other words, a lot of those redactions in the actual affidavit that supposedly authorized the search, or at least gave a federal magistrate the reason to say, yeah, go ahead and do it. You know, we don't have any idea about any of that. Okay, so it can be used as a cover-up. And I still haven't gotten anything from them except how dare people think that the FBI and the Department of Justice would stoop so low as politics. Yeah, well, we can read. Again, that's just my opinion, just so I'm saying. So all of these boxes that were, my God, they're super secret stuff that can damage the United States of America, which is why we left them for nearly 2 years in the possession of Donald Trump. Well, by golly, they went and got them. And as a part of that search, apparently they took stuff out of boxes, put them out on the carpet, and took a picture. And since this response to what President Trump said, hey, we need a special master because I don't trust the DOJ and I don't trust the FBI to go through these documents fairly. Strangely enough, the DOJ released a picture of these documents lying on the floor. Strangely enough, also redacted, except for the cover sheets that said top secret. Oh! So we'll get to all of that. But President Trump said, I need a special master. Somebody that can look through all of this in an independent way because, as we know, the DOJ and the FBI are not unbiased. They're not unbiased. It's just as simple as that. That's not my opinion. That's the news. Part of the analysis for fact, that's a fact. And now there is a federal judge now, not a magistrate, a federal judge looking this over. And so what she said was, okay, you guys, I have a preliminary intent to appoint a special master. You tell me why I shouldn't. And that's where all the rest of this came out, all the pictures and so on and so on. So now what we have here, reported by USA Today, the DOJ is now saying it's likely that Mar-a-Lago documents were hidden and efforts made to obstruct the probe. What do you mean they were hidden? In June, they showed all the boxes that were left after the president turned all the other boxes, not packed by him, but packed by the Government Accounting Office. He said, we got these boxes here and told his lawyers to fully cooperate. And then months later, they had this incredible raid because, my God, this is information that could damage America. Now they say that the president likely tried to hide and obstruct their probe. This after statements on the record, even agreed to by the FBI, that he said, by all means, fully cooperate. By all means. It was actually in the affidavit that wasn't redacted. So now they say it's likely. Okay, so in the big world of police investigations, there is something called mere suspicion. Mere suspicion is not probable cause. Mere suspicion is not probable cause. Mere suspicion is what you think might have happened. When the DOJ says it's likely that Mar-a-Lago documents were hidden and there was an effort to obstruct the probe, that's mere suspicion. It's supposition. You don't get to move forward legally on mere suspicion and supposition. You have to have probable cause. They say they've got it. Oh my God, it's obvious. We've got probable cause. Show me the affidavit. Oh no, we can't because it compromises our witness identities and sources and methods. Yeah, it also compromises your very greasy cover-up of what is an absolute abuse of power. Now, that's just my opinion. That's my mere suspicion. And this is a news broadcast, not a mere suspicion broadcast. See, I differentiate between the news and my opinion. right? So here's what USA Today says. Justice Department officials told a federal judge late yesterday the appointment of a special master to oversee a review of documents seized from former President Donald Trump's Florida estate earlier this month would impede the government's investigation, which has already uncovered evidence of obstruction in the handling of classified records. Here's another opinion. Hey, DOJ guys, go over to your copier, make copies of everything, and try to keep whatever FBI guys that are still employed by your agency, the biased ones, the ones that want to play politics, from altering the evidence, or just creating evidence. Keep them away from it. Just make copies and send it to the special master. Doesn't impede anything except the time it takes to copy the documents. That's not being impeded. That's being required to be a United States federal law enforcement agency, as opposed to the secret police of the Biden regime. You have to decide which of those names is most appropriate for what you're doing right now. See, you've got control of it. You can make this whatever you want to. Because right now it looks like you're the secret police of the Biden regime. And it's not just me. It's Americans from one end of this country to the other. Once again, just my opinion. Can't speak as a factual basis what Americans from one end of the country to the other. I can't do that. So it's just my opinion. Notice how I differentiate between news and opinion. Yeah, they will be impeded if there's a special master. Okay, so are you impeded by the inspector general that's supposed to be looking over your shoulder with all of this going on? Because that's basically what President Trump is asking for. And he's got to have it. Because just as the GAO broke the chain of evidence when they packed up all this stuff and they sent it to the presidency, the president's private residence, now what we're doing here is now we're saying that this so-called impeding of the investigation is something that just isn't going to fly. In a biting response to Trump's request for an independent screener, prosecutors also refuted claims the former president cooperated with authorities. Well, of course they have to say that. I mean, what cooperation was missing? Here's the room. Here's the boxes. Oh, you want a better lock on that? Fine. Oh, they forgot to put that in the affidavit too. Again, just an opinion. There's more. We will cover it. Someone says, well, John David, the GAO is part of the swamp. Of course they are. They're actually not part of the swamp. That's more politics. They're part of the deep state. How do we know that they didn't just throw stuff in those boxes? This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We have a chat room, and the wit that flows on the chat room is just truly sweet. Joe McNulty is a friend of mine. He's a fellow broadcaster, and we've tried to up the production level of the broadcast. We have these little interludes that have a countdown clock on them when I take a break. And the reason we take breaks is because radio stations can use this audio and this video if they choose to be able to fill a hole in their talk radio broadcasting, and they can play commercials in those breaks. That's what the breaks are for. Eventually, we're going to have video breaks. We're going to have video commercials of sponsors that hopefully you will support, and we'll have some commercials in there. But Joe says, during those breaks, I miss staring at JD's empty desk and critiquing the bunker from which he broadcasts. It's not a bunker. It's actually a studio. This is actually a studio. And I've been trying as hard as I possibly can to go ahead and redecorate the thing and like get some things up here that make this look even more professional. Not that it's that much more professional. It's a little, because we've got two cameras now. This one and this one. This one. And I have the equipment to be able to switch back and forth. Anyway, but one of these days is going to look really cool. And I can hardly wait. But it's not a bunker. All right? Now, don't get me wrong. I've thought about it. As a matter of fact, there's a piece of property in Texas I want to buy. That's right. Want to buy a piece of property, and there's a bunker on it. But anyway, enough about that. Yeah, new office toys. Actually, they're very old. As a matter of fact, one of the things that's going to be behind me right here, right in this area right here, is a U.S. Navy radio that was built by E.H. Scott. Sorry, E.H. Scott. It's cool. But I got to find somebody that knows how to I got to find somebody that can repair it first, get it all checked out. And once that happens, clean it all up and stuff, I'm going to put it back there so you can see it. And we're going to do a really cool thing with like some old tube equipment and so on. Because there was this show that Edward R. Murrow used to do called See It Now. And it was basically the forerunner of 60 Minutes. And what I'd really like to do is I'd like to have a studio that has a bunch of Easter eggs in it that you can see. Because I believe that news has morphed beyond the exchange of factual information. And this show is an attempt to return facts to journalism. And I don't have a lot of resources. This is equipment I've been collecting over the years for this purpose. I've always wanted to do this show. And since 9/11, 2001, I've been doing it. But like I said, it requires a financial capability that I do not possess. But someday, if people think this is worthwhile, then maybe it'll take off. Maybe I can be Joe Rogan-ish at some point, but it's going to take support from you. So make sure you subscribe. Hit the subscription button on the website that you're watching this on. Go to Patreon. Support the report. It would be helpful. It truly would. Just saying. We're going to get back to this mess regarding Trump's papers, the Mar-a-Lago papers, and the fight by the DOJ to try to keep us in the dark. Yeah, so we'll have all that coming up in a minute. This is the Wells Report, back with more next. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We're talking about the Mar-a-Lago papers. We're talking about the former president of the United States' request for a special master to go through all the papers in a fair and honest way. Something that he doesn't believe can happen with the DOJ or the FBI. Do you agree, by the way? Can the president get a fair shake from the DOJ and the FBI? Yes or no? And why? 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. Gail's asking me how I'm doing. I'm fine. Sort of. Kind of. There was something I was thinking about doing before I came into this segment, and that's this. Today's broadcast brought to you by aspirin and Aleve. When you do what John David does, which as an old 64-year-old dude, go to the gymnasium and work your legs into jiggling masses of pain, take Aleve and aspirin, the wonder drug that works wonders. Mostly. Because every time I move, I'm reminded that I'm old. I was thinking about that. So, yeah, and I did upper body today. Things are beginning to tighten up. Let's get back to what's going on with the Mar-a-Lago papers. The president has asked for a special master. The judge involved in the case said to the DOJ, I have a preliminary notice to appoint a special master. Tell me why I shouldn't. And they did. And as a part of that, they released all kinds of pictures, et cetera, of supposedly top secret documents. Now, the documents themselves were redacted in a way that you wouldn't really notice at first glance. But the cover papers saying top secret, those are available. And they said they were just scattered on the floor. They weren't scattered on the floor until the FBI agents scattered them on the floor. More about that in just a couple of moments. So the president said, gosh, we need a special master. In the biting response to that request, prosecutors refuted claims the former president cooperated with authorities in the months leading up to the August 8th search. Justice officials asserted that efforts were made to conceal records eventually recovered by investigators, and that Trump lawyers prohibited agents from viewing the contents of boxes inside a storage room in June, quote, to confirm that no documents with classification markings remained, unquote. What they did was they asked for a warrant. They didn't prohibit agents from doing that. They just said, sure, go get a warrant. They were let into the room. They saw the boxes of documents. They suggested, hey, put a lock on this door. And they did. Why would someone who represents the president of the United States allow the FBI to go through papers without crossing the legal T's and dotting the legal I's? Why would you do that? The answer is you wouldn't. Maybe with Joe Schmo America, but he's not Joe Schmo America. The people of the United States elected him to be the president of the United States. You don't go through presidential papers without a warrant. And I don't care who you are. And since what we've done is broken the seals on all of this gobbledygook where there's no presidential executive authority and there's no attorney-client privilege, when the FBI, under the auspices of a Republican House, Senate, and President, start going through Joe Biden's papers, I will be just as upset about it as I am right now. Because whether I voted for Joe Biden or not, he's still the president of the United States. And you don't go through his papers either. You just don't. It's ridiculous. Anyway, 2 months later, the FBI descended on the property where they discovered 11 sets of classified documents. Among those were more than 30 boxes removed from the property that they knew were already there. They had to know because that had to be on the search warrant. You see, these people are lying. The DOJ is lying. They could just be honest and open. We requested that we go through the boxes to see if there were classified documents in there. The lawyer said, no, come back with a warrant. We came back with a warrant. You know, in a really nice Chevy Impala. Get out with your suit, say, hey, we got this. You mind if we go in? They said, sure, go right ahead. Do it. And oh, by the way, this outrage about no cooperation and so on and so forth still doesn't explain why they went through Melania's underwear drawer. Okay? Just saying. USA Today continues to report 2 months later, FBI agents descended on the property where they discovered 11 sets of classified documents. Among the more than 30 boxes removed from the property, they also discovered things that were covered by attorney-client privilege. And they took those too. Oops. They go on to say, quote, the legal issues presented and the relief requested in the filings are narrow, notwithstanding the wide-ranging meritless accusations leveled against the government in this motion, said Justice Department officials, referring to the Trump request. Not only does the plaintiff lack standing to raise those claims at this juncture, but even if his claims were properly raised, plaintiff would not be entitled to the relief he seeks, unquote. Oh, really? So why did you bother with a warrant at all? Why didn't you just show up with guns in June and just blunder through everything, including Melania's underwear drawer? Why didn't you just do it then? All the president is asking for is fairness. And he's not getting it. These legal issues presented and the relief requested in the filings are narrow, notwithstanding the wide-ranging meritless accusations leveled against the government in this motion. Meritless? So one of your lawyers was already found guilty of altering evidence that was fraudulently presented to the FISA court. The FISA court has censured the FBI for coming before them seeking a search warrant to be able to open up telephones of Trump campaign officials during the 2016 campaign. What do you mean, meritless accusations leveled against the government? What are you talking about? The director of the secret police, the director of the CIA, the director of the Department of Homeland Security, the director of national intelligence, all conspired to get somebody in the Oval Office with a wire so that they could invoke the 25th Amendment and remove the people's choice of president from his office. What do you mean, meritless accusations against the government? They're not meritless. Included in the justice filing was a photograph showing how investigators found top secret records. They said they found these lying on the floor, just perfectly carefully arrayed so that you could get a nice picture. Isn't that strange? Yeah. One thing you know about President Trump, he's a slob. He would just take top secret information after being in the presidency for 4 years. He just takes top secret agents materials and just throw them on the floor. Just perfect for a nice little picture to be shown in a federal motion. And oh, by the way, all of this material was supposedly submitted under seal. I guess it's not a secret anymore then. Included was a photograph showing investigators finding top secret records, some of them designated the highest classifications of the government, strewn on a carpeted room floor. Crap. While president's lawyers have claimed that they had been engaged in months of cooperation prior to the FBI August search, justice officials offered a detailed and potentially damaging counterpoint. After serving a May subpoena at the Trump property, justice officials said Trump's lawyers had certified in June that they had turned over all over the last of all the documents sought by the government. Among them, 38 documents bearing classification markings, including 5 marked as confidential, 16 marked as secret, and 17 documents marked as top secret. Counsel for the former president offered no explanation as to why the boxes of government records remained on the premises nearly 5 months after the production of 15 boxes of documents and nearly 1.5 years after the end of the administration, according to the court filing, which referred to an initial tranche of materials transferred from Mar-a-Lago back to the National Archives. Okay? Regarding all of this, the president says and asserts that he declassified those documents. Those documents were declassified. They were his possession. They were his possessions. Now, that's not something, again, that's not something that you can go and say, my God, the president is trying to obstruct justice. No, that determination is going to have to be in a courtroom somewhere. And I don't think the government's going to win that case. And I do believe that for some strange reason, of course, if they bring the case in D.C., you could probably get a Republican president thrown in federal prison for feeding hamsters to dogs. Anyway, as opposed to President Biden feeding Secret Service agents to dogs, which is a completely different thing. You see, that's that double standard again. Anyway, that I thought that was actually funny. Anyway, so here's the thing. In short order, justice officials argued they soon found evidence of even more documents remaining on the property, and equally troubling that efforts had been made to possibly obstruct their federal inquiry. Well, you're also going to have to take on Merrick Garland for obstructing your federal inquiry because he sat there for weeks trying to figure out whether or not he should do this. So he was obstructing your inquiry as well. All right, so what does President Donald Trump say? Glad you asked. He slammed the Department of Justice following the agency's opposition to his request for a special master to review documents seized from his Mar-a-Lago estate, claiming he had already declassified the materials. In the 40-page response filed Tuesday, Justice Department opposed the appointment of a special master to review documents seized from the Mar-a-Lago estate, saying he lacked standing because the records in question belong to the United States, not him. Oh, yeah? Let's talk to a whole bunch of ex-presidents about who belongs to what document and vice versa. In addition, the DOJ filing said documents were likely concealed and removed from the storage room and that efforts were likely taken to obstruct the government's investigation. The documents were likely concealed and removed, were likely taken to obstruct the government. That's mere suspicion. That's not illegal filing. The judge ought to hammer them on the head with that cute gavel of hers. In a flurry of posts this morning, President Trump said it was terrible the FBI during the raid of Mar-a-Lago threw documents haphazardly all over the floor, perhaps pretending it was me that did it, and then started taking pictures of them for the public to see. Thought they wanted to keep them secret. Lucky I declassified. Trump also appeared to react to Attorney General Merrick Garland's Tuesday memo to personnel, reiterating the DOJ policy that Department communications to Congress must go through the Office of Legislative Affairs. That, by the way, is about whistleblowers from the FBI showing up in Congress and saying, you got to stop these crazy people. Garland's memo comes on the heels of whistleblower claims made to Senator Chuck Grassley. Grassley then said it's a deeply rooted political infection within the FBI. Trump's legal team has a deadline of 8 p.m. tonight to file its reply to the DOJ opposition in the appointment of a special master. That judge needs to make sure that a special master looks at all of this. Some of this material may indeed be serious stuff. And yes, there's going to be a fight about the declassification. But what we've seen here is we've seen the DOJ leaking information to the press designed to damage President Trump again. This is supposed to be submitted under seal. Why is it being released? Somebody needs to answer that question. Okay? Somebody needs to answer that question. All this was supposed to be under seal. Why are we reading about it in the newspaper? What did President Trump release? I wonder if the judge has something to say about that. I sure as hell hope so. I do. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Remember, brought to you by Aleve and Aspirin. When you're an old guy trying to look less like an old guy and you overwork yourself in the gymnasium, Aleve and Aspirin is how you're able to get up out of this chair and go do something that old men also have to do. But let's just leave it right there. Okay. This is the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. By all means, subscribe to this broadcast on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch. But for goodness sake, subscribe, please. I would appreciate it greatly. So this is kind of rich. The Justice Department, after asserting that the president was hiding materials and obstructing their investigation, which is creative embroidery at least, and I'm pretty sure that the judge is going to see right through this. They said that a special master wasn't necessary because they've gone through all the materials. Yeah, we got all this. We took out, yeah. They said that prior to the court issuing a preliminary order to appoint a special master, that a privilege review team had gone through the documents. Oh, yeah. A special master is an independent court-appointed individual who, in this case, would be placed in charge of reviewing the documents. Well, the FBI has a privilege team that's already done that. Yeah. They sift out the privilege stuff. Yeah. Yeah, well, the days of trusting Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. in the FBI are long gone. This is no longer Ephraim Zimbalist Jr.'s FBI. This is President Obama's FBI. This is President Biden's FBI. This is James Comey's FBI. Andrew McCabe's FBI. Peter Strzok's FBI. All of these people lying before Congress. Documented. Did they go to jail like Michael Flynn? Oh, no. No, that's only reserved for Republicans. This is awful. This is just awful. And of course, I used to live in Las Vegas. And in Las Vegas, there's a term for somebody that just cannot stop trying to turn their fortunes around at the gambling table. They're called plungers. When they've lost an ungodly amount of money. When they're sure that the cards are going to turn, and they just never do. They're plungers. These people stepped on a slippery slope of their own making, and in the insolent and passive-aggressive way of doubling down on huge mistakes, as if making them bigger will make them better, now they found themselves in a situation where they took armed people. And oh, by the way, a Coast Guard Zodiac boat armed with a 240 Bravo machine gun? Seriously? In the pond out behind Mar-a-Lago in case anybody was trying to swim away. Yeah, they showed up and they took all this stuff. And it was the first time in American history anything like that had happened. And it's documented the president was, at some level, cooperating with their investigation and gave directions to the people that were representing him at Mar-a-Lago on the day of the raid. And in another circumstance, to fully cooperate. Somehow that's turned into obstruction, is it? No, this isn't Ephraim Zimbalist Jr.'s FBI. No, this is something completely different. This is the secret police. This is the secret police of the Biden regime. And once again, if that rankles you, by all means, give me a call at 817-379-2712. Give me a call and tell me I'm full of crap. Tell me why. I'll listen. Absolutely. Very much interested in that. Want to hear what you have to say. Because to me, it stinks to high heaven and they can't back away. They're plungers. They're plungers. Since we're evoking things from the past, there's a movie called The Hustler. It's one of the films that made Paul Newman. And in that movie, there's another actor, George C. Scott. And he's talking to Minnesota Fats because The Hustler was about a pool shark playing this big money game with Minnesota Fats, played by Jackie Gleason, by the way, who made all of his own shots.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please say that again?
Sorry, I'm being spied on by Siri. Shh, hush, Siri. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I know you've gone through all the papers already. That's good. Thank you. Anyway, George C. Scott's character looks at Fats after the first match and says, "Stick with this guy. He's a loser." President Trump, stick with these guys. They're losers. They're in way over their head. They can't stop. They can't stop themselves. Just stick with them. Just keep asking them questions. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep asking for independent oversight of what they're doing. And tell that Republican Party to get off their dead fat butts and start holding the Democrat Party and the left and the Biden regime accountable for this garbage. Don't just say they're going to do it. Actually flipping do it. Just my opinion. This is the Wells Report. We'll be back with more coming up in just a moment. There we go. A little late. North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We point out both. I make commentary, and then we debate. It's what we do on this broadcast. And the debate is you. My opinions are not news. They're not news. I'm looking at the wrong camera. They're not news. They're indeed just my opinion. Just as valuable as yours. Share it. Share that opinion. It would be marvelous if you did. Let's see what's going on here. We've got a chat room, by the way. You can find that at YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. Let's see who Jube said. All they did during the Obama administration was have dog and pony shows. No arrests, grand juries, just hearings after hearing. Several congressmen became stars, Trey Gowdy being one of those. Yeah, that's true. Republicans don't do much. They talk a lot, but they sure don't do much. And the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, should have been defended tooth and nail by these people. I'm not talking about the Democrat Party. I'm talking about the Republican Party. You see, Democrats are at least honest. They're leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American, fascist. And they make no bones about it. They have no problem with it whatsoever. And if you're a member of their party, if you happen to be a member of the Democrat Party, and you haven't done everything you can to rid yourself of these viral thugs, then you're part of it too. No, I'm talking about Republicans. Yeah, well, you know what Democrats are. You really don't know what Republicans are. My God, we're going to have the oversight of the FBI when we get power. All we got to do is just get power, and we'll do nothing, because that's what you do. The United States of America has a real chance to return to true greatness. But the Republican Party isn't up to the job. No, the Conservative Party of the United States is up to the job, but unfortunately nobody belongs to that party. Because we keep thinking, because we must be insane, that regardless of what the Republican Party shows us over and over and over again, that somehow we're going to get a different result. And guess what? We're not going to get a different result. We're just not. Okay? This is the third hour of the Wells Report. By the way, if you missed the first two, pretty good. You might want to check them out. They're pretty good. Pretty darn good. If I do have to say so myself. So make sure that you look them over. You'll find them a little bit later on Patreon. You can find those. You can find them on Facebook right now. You can find them on Facebook, and you can also find them on YouTube. And by the way, I just found out that I have an IMDb page, the International Movie Database page. The Wells Report's on it. I had no idea. Let's see. Oh, Gail says, JD, speaking of debates, why have we had any debates? Well, let's see. In Pennsylvania, John Fetterman is not going to debate Dr. Oz. And the reason is because Fetterman's had a stroke and he doesn't think well. He's got a problem. He does. He has a serious problem, and I'm sure that he's thinking okay inside there, but he can't translate his thoughts into words. And because of that, he's kind of in a situation where, a debate would be disastrous. And so he's not going to have one. Well, that should be instructive. But once again, when you have a political machine in play, and that's what the Democrat Party has, the mainstream media, the administrative state, the deep state, the security state, all those people working together, it's really, really hard to break through to reality. But Fetterman is impaired. He needs to seek help with his own health. before he seeks to help Pennsylvania into the socialist future that his handlers, Fetterman's handlers, envision for this nation. Just saying. So earlier today, I was discussing, in the first hour, I was discussing a quote from President Biden who said, and about all these brave right-wing Americans who want to defend American freedom, well, you're going to need more than a gun. You're going to need an F-15. By the way, Business Insider last year also printed the same quote, except he also used nuclear weapons. So you're going to need F-15s and maybe a few nuclear weapons if you're trying to defend Americans and their freedom. Yeah, that was pretty rotten. So what we have here is we have our schools being taken over by leftists, because if you really want a socialist government, you got to get to the kids. You got to train the kids to be good socialists. And that's exactly what's been going on for the last 20, 30 years. About a generation. And part of that is this crazy leftist idea that kids need to know everything there is about sex. And in point of fact, sex education isn't necessarily a terrible thing. Beginning in junior high school and going into high school, not in kindergarten through elementary school, especially when what we had wasn't sex education, it was reproductive education. Here's how babies are made. That's not what they're teaching kids now. They're teaching kids now how to make love to each other. Now you have to be respectful about how gay people make love to each other. And how transgender people make love to each other. It's not reproductive education. It's not even sex education. It's having sex education. There's this explainer in USA Today. And once again, they use this term, inflection point. In June, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned the constitutional right to an abortion, sparking conversation about which states teach students how to prevent pregnancy. Really? Yeah. Opponents of sex ed are ramping up attacks, exploiting parental fears, and accusing proponents of pushing education that introduces sexually inappropriate materials to young kids too early, grooming them for sexual abuse. By the way, they say studies show comprehensive sex education reduces child sexual abuse. Sure. Ghislaine Maxwell was taking part in comprehensive sex education. How did that work out? That was my opinion. At the same time, the proliferation of don't say gay bills further complicates sex ed in school. Sex ed in school. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it complicates it. You got to get back to the bare bones. I can't believe I said that. Get back to the basics of sex education, which is reproductive education. I have no problem with reproductive education in any way, shape, or form. Sex education, having sex education, I have problems, especially with having sex education. And where did these studies come from? Studies show, yeah? From who? At the same time, the proliferation of don't say gay bills complicates sex ed in schools, eliminating the possibility of LGBTQ inclusive education. So why are we teaching kids about lesbian, gay, transgender, bisexual, and transgender? Why are we doing that in elementary school? Why are we doing that? If that's not grooming, what is it? And if you're one of these people that think this is a really good idea, LGBTQ inclusive education, if you think that's a really good idea, 817-379-2172. One more time with feeling, verve, and enthusiasm. 817-379-2172. Call me and you explain it to me. Why it's not grooming. Advocates see the attack on sex ed as backlash against an uptick in states implementing more robust sex ed across the country, a response in part to conversations around consent catalyzed by hashtag #MeToo. In the last several years, more states have enacted state-based standards for comprehensive sex education and are implementing curricula that is not only comprehensive in terms of teaching medically accurate information, but is also responsive to LGBTQ youth of color, youth with disabilities, trauma-informed, that includes teaching on healthy relationships. You know, I'm not exactly sure that in the context of having sex education as opposed to sex education, I'm sure that that having information on healthy relationships is what we need to teach kids. I think what we need to teach kids is to limit your relationships. Since hashtag #MeToo, 4 more states require consent to be taught. 2 states require that curriculum is taught in a culturally responsive way, as long as you're not a parent. And 2 more states have policies that now include more affirmative instruction on sexual orientation in LGBTQ communities. Grooming. These changes are taking place in conservative states like Alabama. In 2021, they passed a sex ed bill to remove LGBTQ discrimination from its curriculum. In Oklahoma, 2019 passed a bill requiring schools teaching sex education to include information about consent. You do see this push. By the way, this is all about what comprehensive sex ed is. So far, basically, what I'm seeing is a propaganda piece for the joys and necessities of the sensitivity toward LGBTQ. Yeah. So let's see what else. You do see this push-pull that's happening. The afternoon sparkles with puns. That's according to Christine Soyoung Harley, President and Chief Executive Officer of SIECUS. SIECUS. SIECUS, they hardly know us. That's a nonprofit that advocates for universal comprehensive sex ed. Attacking sex education, attacking LGBTQ instruction in schools is both a reaction to that progress, as well as this headwind that the Christian nationalist movement is really experiencing with the overturning of the Dobbs decision. Well, they haven't overturned the Dobbs decision. Bad writing. 2018 polling from SIECUS shows that 89% of likely voters believe it's important to have sex education in middle school. 98% believe it's important to have sex education in high school. There's less acceptance of sex education curriculum that begins in elementary school. Yeah, that's right. And all of this stuff is antique thinking anyway, if you ask me. Insofar as anybody spent some time with Showtime, HBO, Cinemax? Yeah. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. Tell me where I'm getting this comprehensive sex education wrong, because it looks to me like it's comprehensive having sex education. Back in a minute. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. There are materials being taught in schools that are pornographic. Parents have brought them to the attention of school boards, only to be roughly removed. There are materials being taught in schools, in elementary school, for example, that I can't read on this broadcast. What does that say about them? One of the greatest challenges advocates of comprehensive sex education must overcome are misbeliefs among parents that sex ed is solely about sex. You see, once again, we're conflating sexuality with reproductive education. Everybody needs reproductive education, beginning maybe, sixth grade, not all the way through kindergarten through elementary school. Okay, reproductive education is different than sex ed. What this is essentially recruiting / public relations for the LGBTQ movement. That's different than reproductive education. And no, if you believe that comprehensive sex education is more than just about sex, you're grooming. In elementary school, you're grooming. Comprehensive sexuality education has to do with everything in the world that's connected meaningfully to issues of sex, gender, and reproduction, said Deborah Rothman, human sexuality educator and author of The Science of Babies, the little book for big question about bodies, birth, and families. If you think deeply enough about that, that is everything in the world. We take this enormous subject and we pass it along through a funnel to focus on sex. No, this is intricately woven into the fabric of human life. Not in elementary school. Once again, I understand this, Ms. Deborah Rothman. She's probably a doctor. Dr. Rothman, I understand all this. But I got to be perfectly honest with you. It may be perfect in your office, laboratory, classroom, academic pursuit, but that's a vacuum. That's a bubble. Your brave ideas and ideologies have to be translated to people that have different motivations. Advocates for LGBTQ life, for example. You see, the LGBT community, depending on who you ask, represents anywhere from 5 to 10% of the population of America. I want to ask you, Ms. Rothman, would it be better in America if there were more LGBTQ people? Yes or no? Would it be a better America if there were more lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning people? You see, Mother Nature pretty much takes care of all this. So let me ask you, would this be a better country if there were more people who identify as LGBTQ? I bet you said yes. That means you're recruiting. That means you're grooming. And you're starting in elementary school. We just threw Ghislaine Maxwell into jail for 50 years for that. What accountability do you think is appropriate for you? This is the Wells Report. John David Wells at your service. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll be back with more in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. You can find us on a chat room near you, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Donald Weimer just laid this on us. Where there is no freedom of speech, there is no democracy, let alone a republic. With no God philosophy, you'll have slave camps. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the Gulag Archipelago. Wow. Wow. Gail says, if I want my children to learn about the birds and the bees, I will teach them when they're old enough to understand it, not anyone else. That's up to parents. Yeah, parents know their kids better than anybody. But kids are not students. Kids are projects in the school systems now. They are subjects of indoctrination. And this is part of it. On Fox News, Jesse Watters World is the name of the show. And I forgot to write her name down. Miriam somebody. Anyway, she's a doctor. She's going to tell us a little bit about what actual grooming is.
Well, let's define the word grooming. Grooming is the emotional and psychological manipulation of a vulnerable person, often a child.
This is Miriam Grossman.
In order to, at some later time, exploit that person. And we normally use the term when we're talking about sexual predators, people who plan to sexually abuse kids. But more recently, we're using the term to apply to activists, especially teacher activists who are manipulating psychologically and emotionally their students and recruiting them into radical sexual and gender ideologies.
Sounds like grooming to me. Sounds like grooming to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But this is part of an article from Fox News regarding some parents in Wisconsin. They're outraged over a Wisconsin school district decision to adopt a new sex education curriculum for kids as young as kindergarten. Ted Barthel and Michelle Hughes join Fox News. The curriculum at Wauwatosa near Milwaukee introduces students in kindergarten to names for private body parts, while that's in kindergarten, while students in grades 2 through 3 learn gender stereotypes, consent, and body image. 6th grade students receive instructions on different types of sexual activity. Having sex education. Instead of sex education, it's having sex education. Here's how you have sex. Not for 6th graders. The parents told Fox News the curriculum goes far beyond acceptable boundaries, with Hughes adding that she will take advantage of the opportunity to opt her son out of those lessons. This curriculum does have some good things in it, admittedly. It teaches kids about healthy relationships, proper boundaries, and inappropriate touch. The content extends much further, according to the parents, mentioning borderline pornographic images for students in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade. The contents that's bad is really, really bad. I'm a dad with a 7th grade daughter. Listen to this quote. Quote, I'm a dad with a 7th grade daughter. I send my girl to school to learn how to read, write, and to do math. I'm not looking for her to come home and say, quote, hey, Dad, I don't know if I'm a boy or a girl anymore, unquote. Says it all. Absolutely says it all. Many of the topics are not age appropriate. Many of the topics we're asking to be taught much, much later. Adding that those who created the curriculum were affiliated with a political organization tied to social justice. Hughes added that the school district consulted teachers to gain a sense of their opinions on the curriculum and found that a majority believed such conversations should take place in later grades. My son is 11. He's a 6th grader. he will be opting out of this program. This is much too soon for our young students. In several instances, beginning in third grade, the curriculum discusses students who do or will menstruate, or a person with a vulva. The curriculum for fourth graders delves further into gender identity, with objectives including having students define cisgender, transgender, gender non-binary, gender expansive, and gender identity. A spokesperson for the Wauwatosa School District told Fox News that the curriculum is grounded in the National Sex Education Standards, Wisconsin State Statute 118.019, and data collected via the Youth Risk Behavioral Survey. This is outrageous. It's outrageous. The parents are correct. Okay? The parents are correct on this. And this is what happens when activism replaces education. And that's where we are. That's where we are. Elsewhere in the public health front, U.S. life expectancy dropped for the second consecutive year in 2021, falling by nearly a year from 2020. This according to a government report being released today. In the first 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic, the estimated American lifespan shortened nearly 3 years. The last comparable decrease happened in the early 1940s during the height of World War II. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention officials blamed COVID-19 for about half the decline in 2021, a year when vaccinations became widely available, but new coronavirus variants caused waves of hospitalizations and deaths. Other contributors to the decline are long-standing problems: drug overdoses, heart disease, suicide, chronic liver disease. It's a dismal situation. It's bad before, and now it's gotten worse, said Samuel Preston, University of Pennsylvania demographer. Life expectancy is an estimate of the average number of years a baby born in a given year might expect to live, given death rates at the time. It's the most fundamental indicator of population health in the country, said Robert Hummer, a University of North Carolina researcher focused on population health patterns. U.S. life expectancy rose for decades, but progress stalled before the pandemic. It was 78 years, 10 months in 2019. In 2020, it dropped to 77 years. Last year, it fell to 76 years. The last time it was that low was in 1996. Declines during the pandemic were even worse for some racial groups. Some gaps widened. For example, life expectancy for American Indians and Alaskan Native people saw a decline of more than 6.5 years since the pandemic began, and is at 65 years. In the same span, life expectancy for Asian Americans dropped by about 2 years and stands at 83.5. Experts say there are many possible reasons for such differences, including a lack of access to quality health care, lower vaccination rates, and a greater share of population in lower paying jobs that require them to keep working when the pandemic was at its worst. The new report is based on provisional data. Life expectancy estimates can change with the addition of more data and further analysis. For example, the CDC initially said life expectancy in 2020 declined by 1 year and 6 months. But after more analysis came in, it became 1 year and 10 months. And let me double check this. Plunges for a second consecutive year. It doesn't say exactly how much and whether or not the life expectancy fell worse this year than it was last year or the year before. Here's what's going on. It's likely the declines in 2020 and 2021 will stand as the first 2 consecutive years of declining life expectancy in the U.S. since the early 1960s. Here are some of the findings. Life expectancy for women in the U.S. dropped about 10 months from just under 80 to 79 in 2021. Life expectancy for men dropped a full year from 74 years to 73. COVID-19 deaths were the main reason for the decline. The second largest contributor was deaths from accidental injuries, primarily from drug overdoses. Fentanyl ring a bell? Which killed a record-breaking 107,000 Americans last year. Fentanyl ring a bell? White people saw the second biggest drop among racial and ethnic groups, with life expectancy falling 1 year to 76 years, 5 months. Black Americans had the third largest decline, falling more than 8 months to 70 years, 10 months. Hispanic Americans had seen a huge drop in life expectancy in 2020, 4 years, but in 2021, life expectancy for them dropped by about 2 months to 77 years, 7 months. The U.S. report, or the report, also suggests against suicide as being against suicide are being undone. Gains against suicide. There we go. I left out a word. Gains against suicide are being undone. U.S. suicide rates from the early 2000s, or rose from the early 2000s to 2018. They fell in 2019, then more in 2020, the first year of the pandemic. Experts wondered if that may have been related to a phenomenon seen in the early stages of wars and national disasters, in which people band together and support each other. The new report said suicide contributed to the decline of life expectancy in 2021, but did not provide details. According to the provisional numbers from a public CDC database, the number of U.S. suicides increased last year by 2,000 to 48,000. U.S. suicide rate rose as well from 13.5 per 100,000 to 14.1, bringing it back up to where it was in 2018. And then there's this. The FDA authorized Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna's updated COVID-19 boosters. Did they give full approval? No. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration authorized updated COVID-19 vaccine booster shots from Moderna and Pfizer, the first time the updated COVID-19 vaccines have received emergency use authorization. Emergency use authorization. The first emergency use authorization is almost 2 years old, isn't it? 2 years? Why don't they have full FDA approval? I need an answer to that. Why don't we have full FDA approval for these vaccines? Why are they still getting emergency use authorizations? I'm waiting. Will somebody please ask that question? Please. Please. Both are bivalent vaccines that combine the company's original vaccine with one that targets the BA.4 and BA.5 Omicron sublineages. Fancy wordage. Pfizer's updated vaccine is a 30 microgram dose authorized for people 12 and older. Moderna's updated vaccine is a 50 microgram dose authorized for people 18 and older. The shots can be administered after they're recommended by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The CDC's Vaccine Advisory Group is scheduled to vote tomorrow on whether to support recommending the boosters for use. Then the CDC director must sign off on the recommendation. I wonder if that'll happen. Remind me someday to ask me why I asked that question. An okay from the CDC would mean that updated boosters could be administered within days, both to older people who may have received a booster just a few months ago and younger people who haven't been eligible for an additional booster since the latest wave of the cases. Why is this an emergency use authorization? Why isn't there full FDA approval of these vaccines as being safe and therapeutic? Is it because they're not safe or therapeutic? Just asking. Really would like to know. Need the info. I'm the boss. You know, an American citizen. Let me know. What's going on here? Why don't these have full FDA approval? Boy, that's a good question, isn't it? That's such a great question. I'm proud of myself for coming up with that one. Yeah. This is the Wells Report. Hi, I'm John David Wells. Our telephone number 817-379-2172. Yeah, that max is coming up in just a second. That's coming up in just a couple of seconds. While we're on the subject of malfunctioning federal agencies and bad data, there's more. You're not going to believe it. You are not going to believe what I'm going to share with you next. It was predictable. It was absolutely predictable. But Max broke the seal on it, and I will tell you what he's talking about next. This is the Wells Report. Back in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We bring you the news. We analyze the news for fact and bias. We make commentary, then we debate. This was predictable. This was predictable, and it just goes to show you that California is being run by insane asylum residents. The other day, they passed a law that would illegalize the use of gasoline-powered cars by 2035. Other states are poised to do the same thing. You might want to rethink. The California Independent System Operator, known as ISO, that's a nonprofit that handles the state's power grid. By the way, for those nonprofits that handle the power grid, it's only a nonprofit if your officers and managers don't get bonuses. Anyway, the California Independent System Operator, a nonprofit that handles the state's power grid, issued a heat bulletin yesterday. They warned of extreme heat during the upcoming Labor Day weekend. They put out a statement that said, quote, "It's likely to strain the grid with increased energy demands," unquote. They added that they expect to call upon residents to take voluntary measures to reduce power consumption, including taking a break from using large appliances and take a break from charging your electric car. Oh, I see. Yeah. California is now telling people to avoid charging their electric vehicles, but only between 4 and 9 p.m. So let's see. So you drive your electric car to work and you need to recharge it. So you don't get to recharge it at the neighborhood Walmart charging station until 9 p.m. How many hours does it take to get you a big enough charge to go home? Let's see. If you live in LA, there are people that live completely outside the LA basin that travel in and travel out. That means it'll probably take at least 4 hours to charge your car. If you own a Tesla, how long does it take to charge your car? So that if it's, let's just say it's 4 hours. So that means, let's see, 4 hours, that would make it 10, 11, 12, midnight. And then you have the drive home, which is probably going to take you an hour and a half. That means you're going to get home at about 1:30 in the morning. Yeah. California is telling people to not charge their electric vehicles from 4 until 9 p.m. This is from the same state that's going to force everybody to buy an electric car by 2035. Yeah, this was from Steve Scalise, who is the House Republican whip. He is a Republican from Louisiana. This is what Democrat control looks like, and they want to take it nationwide. And they will if we let them. The ISO explained that reducing electricity consumption during the evening hours will ease the strain on the system, prevent more drastic measures, including rotating power outages. It was just last week the California Air Resources Board approved regulations that would likely result in electric cars eventually being the only viable option in the state. The Advanced Clean Cars 2 regulations, if approved by the Environmental Protection Agency, will prohibit the sale of gasoline-powered cars starting in 2035. The projected outcome says that they hope to reach a point of 35% of the cars sold in the state being fossil fuel free as soon as 2026. This is a no-brainer. It's actually a no-brainer. Or it's a no-brainer no. There are a lot of real problems with this. They don't have the electric infrastructure necessary to be able to charge electric cars. They're not going to have it by 2035. They're just not going to have it. There are actually three nuclear power plants that have been shut down in California. Okay? The Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, the Rancho Seco nuclear power plant, and the San Onofre nuclear power plant. They've been shut down. Now, can they be reactivated? Maybe. Maybe they can. But the state of California decided to get rid of everything they have to make electricity. You can't burn natural gas to do it. Too much carbon dioxide. You sure as hell can't use oil. Oh. So what are you going to use? Well, we can give you this nice little this life cycle bike that will also generate electricity. Come to think of it, you could ride a bike to work. California is being run by lunatics. So buy an electric car, but don't charge it between 4 and 9 in the afternoon. That's a hard stop. This is not a hard stop, but it is a stop. We're done with the Wells Report today. See you again tomorrow for another edition of this broadcast. Tell your friends about us, will you? Thanks. And okie dokie. So what'd you think? Huh? What did you think? What did you think? Yes, Arthur, most electric vehicle owners charge their vehicles at home. That's wonderful. Except for one problem. They don't want you to charge your vehicles at home until 9 p.m. Yeah. I think it was a good show. Thank you very much, Max. I appreciate your contribution today. Tomorrow will not be fishing shirt Friday. It however may be fifthing Thursday. Yeah. Huh. All right, my friends. I'm going to leave now. God bless all y'all.